God, we ask you to enter the hearts and minds that gather before you, so they understand what we present this evening, to ensure those who truly want to be your foot soldiers can do so. Amen. A special thank you to the entire AbleChild team of volunteers for making this event possible. A very special thank you to our VIP donors that allowed us to open this event to others by sponsoring tickets. AbleChild is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. We do not take any federal or state grants. We rely solely on your funding, and we thank you and celebrate your generosity. We do not take salaries, and we have put pledge cards on each table for donors if it so moves you. A special thank you to Kevin Strunk for this amazing venue and his entire staff for all the setup and tech help. Thank you to the 21st Amendment Distillery for donating your labor to this event.
It's an honor to see so many friends and family here tonight with us. And for our supporters, it is our honor to introduce you to our organization, AbleChild, and join us in awarding 4 warriors who have been outstanding in their field. These few are blazing the trail in cutting-edge journalism and providing much-needed information to the public so that all of us can enjoy the basic right of being fully informed. Informed consent allows us to make thoughtful, accurate decisions in our lives and in the lives of the ones we love. The information these warriors provide is essential for any of us to give our consent in so many important issues that we face today. Our awardees were selected for their courage, for their tenacity, and their creativity in delivering the truth. These are the warriors who are willing to fight for others so that we may receive vital information that ultimately save lives. Tonight, it is our hope you take away a clear understanding of the significant challenges we face and the urgency to support brave journalists that are covering topics that are crippling our nation and robbing our children of their future. When you take away informed consent from the people, not only are liberties at stake, but the life of every human being is put at risk. As you listen tonight, remember our children are not Republicans. They're not Democrats, nor independents. Children are not born to destroy, to fail, or to kill. AbleChild would like to remember 2 individuals that have impacted our mission who are no longer with us.
Michael Loper. My sister's husband reached out to the psychiatric industry for help. He was placed on nortriptyline, an older antipsychotic for depression. Michael had just bought his very first dream home and his career was beginning to soar. He asked his treating psychiatrist to get off the drugs. The psychiatrist withdrew him without any blood work and never told him of the deadly side effects getting onto, while, or getting off the mind-altering drugs. Michael killed himself, leaving my sister without a husband and her 2 beautiful children without a father. The psychiatrist was never held to account. We know that we are not the only ones that this has happened to.
Jessica Cody was a brilliant writer that contributed her talents to our mission. and she was truly an able child in her early school years. However, she was labeled by psychiatrists, placed on multiple psychiatric drugs, and fell into addiction. Jessica was 37 years old and tragically died just a few short weeks ago. There is a study called the Berkeley Study, which determined that psychiatric drugs are gateway drugs to addiction. Consumers are never told of this Berkeley study. Jessica's family and our AbleChild team have suffered a tremendous loss. The anti-stigma campaign that the psychiatric industry and big pharma promote fails to address the families and friends who did reach out for help and received only addiction and death. This is AbleChild's first public service announcement.
Within this room, there are two banners in which we invite you to scan and sign the petition to call for federal hearings into the link between psychotropic drugs and mass violence. Our campaign is called It's Not the Guns. We have AbleChild volunteers to help you access the CR code on the banner to sign. Tonight, there are over 100 people here in this room. We need 10,000 signatures. This is our new PSA. It's called It's Not the Guns. We ask you to share it. It can be found on AbleChild's website, as with all the information we share this evening. This is our newly released public service announcement.
We heard today a harsh indictment of the failings of mental health care, studying the murders at Sandy Hook Elementary School. After 2 years of study, the report identifies failures that still pose a threat.
Conclude that the murderous actions were caused by antidepressants. It's harmful because then you can cause a lot of people to stop taking their medications, stop cooperating with their treating physicians.
Receiving outpatient treatment.
That's not something we can comment on.
Pardon me?
We can't comment on that.
Fascinating.
It was no accident when Patricia Weathers and I met. She saved me from placing my son on psychiatric drugs. I watched Patty testify before Congress against the psychiatric industry, and they were lobbying to get into the public education system. They wanted more access to our children, pushing dangerous psychiatric drugs that have been linked to increased risk of suicide and a litany of violent behaviors. Patty's testimony compelled me to call Congress for her contact information. This was a woman I needed to meet and talk to. And it was that one moment that brought us here tonight. We had no idea the billions of dollars in powerful people we would be fighting for decades. Along the way, it's been scary, but Patty and I know that giving up would leave our children and your children and grandchildren in a very scary place. We take our hats off to those who have and will join the fight. We thank you for showing your support for this cause this evening. The following is a video of our mission.
A dilemma united these two moms. Patricia Weathers and Sheila Matthews say elementary school staff pressured them to medicate their young sons for attention disorders.
The school principal actually told me, you know, your son isn't focused, he's not on task, and this is like a continual problem. She goes, counseling is too slow a process, and you need to put your child on medication.
You fought it though, in the beginning.
Something inside of me told me that that was not what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I had everybody telling me, oh, it's safe, it's gonna help him focus. You think that here are experts. Maybe these people know more than me.
Patricia gave her 7-year-old son various drugs for more than 2 years.
He was up and down. He became psychotic.
What do you mean?
He literally attacked me physically, hitting me. He went to school and he was banging his head against the desk. When he was asked to take a test, he ate the test. And I said, this is not my son. I'm pulling my son off these drugs.
You, Sheila, had a similar situation?
My son too, he was 7 at the time. I started getting calls. He was calling out, getting up out of his seat, and then I was told by the school psychologist that I should really consider putting him on psychiatric drugs. I was like, this is so not what I want.
Sheila then saw Patricia on TV during one of the times she testified before Congress about medicating children labeled ADD or ADHD.
Because our children are suffering and
I called her up and I was like, help me. And she was like, my suggestion is that you research the drugs, and my suggestion is you don't do it. And I went to the school and I said, I am not putting my son on these drugs. This is so wrong. And we're gonna tell other moms about this.
In 2001, the women became activists, forming the nonprofit AbleChild, which educates parents and lawmakers. After Patricia found out that her son had anemia, hypoglycemia, and allergies, she changed his diet, and his attention problems improved. Sheila focused on how her son communicated. By working on his speech and language, his disruptive behavior stopped.
parents aren't being told that there are other solutions that you can do with a child, because the medication and drugs are like the quick fix.
Steve Perry, Millbrook, New York.
Well, Patricia's son, Michael, and Sheila's son, Joseph, are now thriving young adults. Both graduated high school. Michael is a mechanic living in New York, and Joseph is a sophomore majoring in marketing at Bowling Green State University.
Sheila and I joined forces to create AbleChild, a national nonprofit organization to combat the attack on our children. The psychiatric community and drug companies were not going to make patients of our children, and we are not going to let it happen to yours either. Big Pharma has been and continues to wiggle its way into the school system and through school psychologists to gain access to our children. It is heartbreaking how many mothers and fathers we have met along the way who have had nowhere to turn for accurate information or support when confronted by the money and power of the behavioral health providers and drug companies. Many of those parents lost their children to psychiatric drugs and have never had their day of justice. Your support of our cause will help parents we meet going forward. The next video is AbleChild's work over the years.
A lot of hairdos.
I just want to say that I do not think for 1 minute that schools need additional psychologists. I mean, additional funding going to psychologists who push disorders and push medication? I don't think so.
To hold these children in a facility like Riverview, in locked conditions, forced drugged, restrained, needs to be completely abandoned.
If I didn't have family members who were willing to financially back me and my son's cause, it is entirely possible that my son would have ended up in a psychiatric ward. Parents are told that their child has a chemical imbalance or a neurobiological illness. We risk our child's life based on this fundamental lie.
Candace's death entirely was avoidable. The blood of these children is on your hands. You cannot continue to dismiss our reports, for we are in the tens of thousands.
So what do you want Congress to do here?
I want an investigation into the correlation between the psychiatric drugs and the school shooters.
Amy Philo of Frisco is launching a crusade against the Mothers Act.
The more women who go on these drugs, the more we're going to see more mothers committing suicide and homicide.
No one, not the FDA, not the pharmaceutical corporations, have the right to make those choices for us.
People have the right to not believe in the psychiatric industry.
They're not trying to help mothers. They're trying to drug mothers, and that's not the solution.
It's an intimidation tactic to get parents, to coerce parents to medicate.
And there's no accountability from the drug company or the mental health industry.
And other parents I know it's happened to, and I know that they've got to speak up. They've got to come forward.
You as the parent, stand tall for your child, be there, don't let anybody influence you, and certainly don't let anybody try to change your child into somebody that they're not.
AbleChild provided Diane Sawyer with vital information regarding her year-long investigation into the drugging of foster care children. Our organization, with volunteers and a shoestring budget, had 2 psychiatric drugs banned for use, Paxil and Effexor, for use on children in state care in Connecticut for a 6-month review period, which made the cover of the New York Times and the Hartford Courant. We are so proud to have so many wins, such as helping pass the Prohibition on Mandatory Medication Act. We obtained a 1-800 MedWatch number for consumers to report adverse drug events on generic drugs in the state of Connecticut. We spent a year with investigative reporter Kelly O'Mara, who wrote the first national story for the Washington Times Insight magazine linking psychiatric drugs to school shooters. The 1999 cover story was called Guns and Doses. Few are aware that AbleChild was instrumental in having the treating psychiatrist of the killer in Sandy Hook mass shooting arrested by Homeland Security. Many people don't realize that several Newtown, Connecticut police officers were arrested in a corruption scandal for selling drugs and long guns out of the station in the aftermath. Investigation by the FBI. As is typical, the media failed to explore the details of that story. This is why we need brave people like those we are honoring this evening.
It is disheartening when someone in need reaches out for help, only to find that assistance depends on the helper's financial gain. While there are good people within the mental health industry, they don't know their industry is based on a total lack of informed consent and accountability.
The industry is commingling suicide deaths with suicides that are created by their psychiatric drugs. Their labels are subjective, lack science, no brain scans, no blood tests, no x-rays, so their market is endless. They use these statistics to increase grant money, claiming a lack of funding, keeping children trapped in foster care, and robbing the educational system of real educational tools. Where do you begin to stand up to this corruption? AbleChild has found a crack in their wall. It's informed consent. We need to tap harder on that crack and break through it. We are asking for your help to do that with us tonight.
We are here in Middletown, Connecticut, where we are at SONEC facility. This is foster care. This is where we are led to believe that children are receiving mental health treatment. This property is owned by the state of Connecticut. It's 67 acres. It is worth $30 million. And we are going to take you inside this property to tell you and show you the conditions of the mental health treatment that the state of Connecticut is providing to children. Today, let us all be their parents and take a look. Would you want your child here? Would you consider this mental health treatment? Seek the questions we raised in the committee's July public portion of this meeting. We were asked to submit those questions in writing. We complied and still await a response. The additional request we have based on our visit, we are seeking the compliance records of the recommendations that were made in the audit relating to the access to mental health. We are happy to submit our request in writing and urge this committee to respond to all of our inquiries on behalf of the consumers.
AbleChild is teaming up with others to tackle this crime against humanity. We cannot do it alone. We would like to welcome the Children's Health Defense Reform Pharma team, Amy Miller and Justine Tagway. Most of you probably know that Bobby Kennedy, the founder of Children's Health Defense, but now is the chairman on leave because he is running for president of the United States. We are honored to work with Reform Pharma this last week in Tennessee, where we supported the need for legislation that could achieve 3 things. Number 1, require the psychotropic drug history of those who commit violent acts. Number 2, for the data to be made public. And number 3, prohibit behavioral health vendors from participating in mass shooting investigations. Tennessee has a bill filed that incorporates model language provided by AbleChild that would remove Big Pharma and the psychiatric industry from being involved in mass shooting investigations or suicides. This bill would ensure that Big Pharma and the mental health industry are not able to manipulate or cover up data when psychiatric drugs play a role. Please help us recognize Children's Health Defense Reform Pharma.
Tonight, we have the privilege of shining a spotlight on an extraordinary woman whose early career was dedicated to the AbleChild. The mission of AbleChild is founded on President Eisenhower's AbleChild. President Eisenhower funded the idea to encourage the able child in education to ensure that every child met their full potential. This action also benefited our entire nation. Here is a clip of the original intent of our educational grant system in public schools. Our next awardee worked within this grant system.
The day Soviet scientists jauntily drop-kicked the first Sputnik around the world, the average American was shocked, bewildered, and resentful. But the men who cope with mob scenes like this, our harassed U.S. college administrators, were not surprised. On Sputnik Day, President Eisenhower's committee report on higher education rivaled Russia's March-stealing moon as a cause for concern on every campus. Beyond these student throngs, 3 million in all, are more than 200,000 each year of our ablest high school graduates who must get along without higher education. Studying this scene, you may ask, just how important is it that these young people become teachers, scientists, administrators? Here's one answer. Sputnik is a product of higher education, of instructors who teach much of the physics and mathematics in high school that we teach in college. How important? Our survival may depend on degrees and graduates we are not now equipped to produce. The decade ahead is one of critical decision. Expand, improve, support, urges the committee. Expand everywhere and now.
As a label of attention deficit disorder was sold to our nation by the psychiatric industry and Big Pharma, the existence of the AbleChild, described in President Eisenhower's National Defense Education Act, might have otherwise been lost. But the human spirit, the generational thread which connects the light and the truth from one generation to another, is pulled together and becomes the very key that unlocks a door to our collective future. It is when we focus on gifts rather than deficits, on creativity rather than labels and drugs, a nation will thrive. It is in this landscape that our honoree has not only recognized the brilliance of gifted minds, but has tirelessly worked to safeguard their potential. Rosemarie Frigerio has been a trailblazer in ensuring that the AbleChild grants were focused on providing the child with the tools, the support, and understanding necessary to flourish. Please join us in recognizing Rosemarie Frigerio.
I am extremely appreciative of being recognized for my educational work by Sheila and AbleChild. I believe AbleChild is one of the most vital organizations that is advocating for effective educational programs for all children without the use of drugging students in the classrooms, especially without informed consent. As a former teacher and administrator, I encountered numerous students with atypical behavior patterns that included boredom, disinterest, daydreaming, and other disruptive behavioral patterns that cause them to be labeled and or drugged in the school settings. I recognize that many of these students were intelligent and capable, but they did not achieve due to the restrictive curriculum programs devised by the bureaucratic structure and detached administrators that were far removed from the classrooms. It was also evident to me that not every child was suited for the academia, and not every child had the athletic attributes afforded to others. I felt that the restrictive curriculum programs were impeding the identification and educational programs needed for the effective education of every student. Therefore, I strived to find and provide the best learning programs for each and every student's successful achievement. Since I was concerned about these students, I did a large amount of research and found multiple studies from many highly recognized educational experts about this issue. In fact, I found that Dr. Sidney P. Marlin, Jr., former Assistant Secretary of Education in the early 1970s, supported the need to reach all students, that he included in his report about education of gifted and talented. He stated, "The great social reforms of recent years must go forward. This noble and necessary work does not imply the raising or lowering of standards of our citizens to one mean mediocrity." This quote affirmed the position about the inadequate provisions for talented and gifted students in our schools. In other words, we were taking a heterogeneous group of students and trying to transform them into a homogeneous group through a restrictive curriculum. I further researched Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives, and his framework consisted of 6 major categories: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Another professor from Harvard pointed out that there were 8 intelligences and how we are not naturally skilled in the same ones. One of the most interesting studies was the theory of multiple intelligences by Howard Gardner, who was a psychologist and professor at Harvard University. He explained 12 types of intelligences. These types were logical, mathematical, linguistic, spatial, body kinesthetics, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic, emotional, existential, creative, and collaborative. Some of these intelligences fall within the category of psychomotor abilities. Garland maintained that if we want to be exceptional at something, your best bet is to understand the unique areas of intelligence where you have an advantage and build upon those strengths. In my personal experience, I found that many students did have more than one type of intelligence and had multi-potentialities. In my quest to provide specialized programs for the heterogeneous group of students that I taught, I applied for grants, utilizing the research and other sources that I was able to incorporate. I was able to implement new teaching and learning methodologies that included advanced teaching and learning skills for all. I was extremely pleased at the results of the individualized programs that I was able to develop the various interests and levels of learning for my students that included not only cognitive, but motor skills as well. These interests, their interests, enthusiasm, and achievement levels soared without the use of drugs. I recognize that their strengths first, and built upon them so that they could have positive learning experiences. I believe it is imperative for parents, teachers, school system, and AbleChild to work together in order to develop programs that will assist each individual student to achieve success as an alternative to drugs. I am hopeful that everyone will stand together with AbleChild in their efforts to achieve their missions. Thank you.
Okay, so when we imprinted the award with Exposing Truth in the Age of Lies, it was based on the next awardee's tenacity in the way he informed the public for 4 hours a day, 2 hours in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and a special 2-hour morning show on Saturdays. We all wonder when he sleeps. Between two sisters that I have here tonight, you know not to call during those hours. If you do, the answer you will get is, I will meet you in the war room. His show, The War Room, is captivating. Stephen K. Bannon is changing our perspective and inspiring us to learn about our own potential as people and the power we possess here in the United States and around the world to stand up and take our countries back. We are honored to be on The War Room and appreciate Steve Bannon for his courage to take on the issue of the drugging of children. Here is the clip.
Why would they put them on this, and how possibly could they ever convince a parent to sign the document that you have to sign if there's studies that show that they have, hostility, agitation, leading up to homicidal ideation, which means, hey, I'm thinking about killing some people. Just walk me through, and I didn't know schools were medical facilities, but you're saying the schools can diagnose through the school psychologist, they can diagnose a kid with something, and next thing you know, they're on drugs. I want to thank the brothers Hoff and Gateway Pundit. They brought Sheila to my attention. We have not spent enough time in this topic. This is a scandal of this world. This is what's helped destroy a generation of young men.
Maureen, Steve Bannon's daughter, shows us the softer edges of her dad. A strong leader and strategic thinker that this world so desperately needs. Maureen is the CEO of The War Room and an Army veteran who has won our hearts as Stephen Bannon's work has impacted our minds. Accepting on Stephen K. Bannon's behalf his lovely daughter, Maureen Bannon.
I know you're used to seeing someone else dressed in all black with better hair, but you guys have me tonight. So War Room started back in 2019 with War Room impeachment, and then in 2020 with War Room pandemic, and we transitioned to the War Room you guys all know and love now in 2022. War Room is just a vessel to get the truth out. It's everyone here and organizations such as AbleChild that get this truth out. We're just the vessel. My dad is just the vessel. Without you guys, we wouldn't be who we are. And we need everyone. Like my dad says, we're at war. We're at war to protect our children, our grandchildren, the future generations. So everyone needs to get involved. Grassroots level, organizations such as AbleChild. Because if we don't, we're gonna lose our kids, our grandkids, the next generations, and we can't do that. We can't allow, that to happen. So you can't sit by and think that someone else is going to do this fight, that my dad and I are gonna do this fight, that AbleChild is gonna do this fight. It takes each and every one of you guys in this room and all of those that you know outside of this room. Spread the information, spread the truth. As my dad says, be force multipliers. It's going to take all of us to get this country back, and we cannot rest on our laurels. I know that we've had some great victories in the past few weeks, but like I said last night, we cannot rest. We have to continue to fight to protect the children. And I'm truly honored to receive this award on my dad's behalf.
The next warrior has tackled data and audits in finance, operation, IT, and presented at boards and executive meetings in the United States and around the world. His expertise in the world of ethics, mathematics, and compliance had him auditing multi-million-dollar corporations. He has earned 10 degrees and designations. Joe Hoft can be heard on TNT, The Joe Hoft Show, and his writing can be found on joehoft.com. Joe Hoft is a contributor to the Gateway Pundit website along his brother Jim. He lived in Hong Kong for nearly a decade. That is until COVID appeared. Compelled to take that data on and report accurately on the commingling of death data, Joe Hoft spoke out. Joe's career would radically change based on his reporting, and he found himself returning to the United States. Did I mention that Joe is also an author? His book series called The Steal took on the never-ending fraud and abuse of the 2020 election. Joe would be censored for his reporting. Our paths crossed when Joe took the time to speak at an AbleChild event. All his books sold out. The public is on fire for men like Joe Hoft. Meeting Joe Hoft has changed the trajectory of our organization, AbleChild. After 23 years of working on this issue, Joe's belief in our organization opened doors that otherwise would remain shut. His selfless action of introducing us to Stephen Bannon gave AbleChild so much positive attention. God has such a way of connecting people together to share the message of truth. Joe is a man that is always giving and engaged in creativity. He has the strength, the knowledge, and spirit to be on the front lines for humanity.
These numbers don't make sense. They're trying to tell us it's 3.4% mortality, and I said, that's not right. I've looked at it, and it was right there in front of anybody if they spent 15 minutes looking at these numbers the WHO was manufacturing. It was all a lie. They were commingling numbers. It was bullshit.
It was all planned. There's so many hints like that. I wrote 3 books on this deal. First one was before the election. All the planning that went into this. My second book is on what happened, and this third one I just released is the cover-up. They covered it all up. They could not let anybody unsteal their steal. Since April, there was 2 polls by Rasmussen, a pretty reputable firm. One poll said 62% of Americans now believe the 2020 election was rigged. I'd argue it's growing. It makes you wonder how many more of those reports were buried.
I think eventually the truth will win. I think that's it. You can't break the truth, so it's going to get out, it's going to creep out, it's going to come out. You can't stop it.
Please welcome Joe Hart.
Thank you all so much. It's such an honor being here. My son there's giving me the thumb up, so it's pretty awesome. I don't know if you sat behind me and watched him. He's hugging me through this whole thing. So, how's that for special? Yeah, really blessed. We all are. So I came here a couple months ago and Sheila invited me in. I didn't know who Sheila was. I met all these ladies. I didn't know who was Sheila and who wasn't, you know. And they started introducing me. I think I ended up signing the books for Sheila, and I put somebody else's name on them. And she still got my books autographed by me, written off to somebody else. So I'll have to catch up with her on that one of these days. I'm so honored to be here today, and there's so many people here that need to be recognized as well. There's Maureen, great job. We love Steve Bannon so much. My brother Jim's here. Jim, maybe you should stand up for a minute. Jim from the Gateway Fund. So, Jim and I are big fans of Steve's. We just love this guy, man. And he gets us on. He says, "Are you the good-looking one or the smart one?" We love that. And my favorite quote of Steve's is, hold on. If you watched him, you know how he does that with every guest. Wait a minute. And he's great. We just love him. I first was introduced to him years ago. I wrote a book when I was overseas in Hong Kong, and it was on the Obama had taken over the U.S. is just being destroyed. We're seeing it at that time. And there was all these great ideas over in Asia Pacific, and I was traveling around. And I wrote this book about it, and I got on Steve's show. He's with Breitbart then. He still remembered that years later. And so I'm really impressed by that. And then he would call me once in a while. I remember once he called me a couple times in Hong Kong. And I was in India once, and he called me, and I'm just like, this is cool, man. I'm in India. I'm talking to Steve Bannon, you know? And I'm just some corporate executive, you know, traveling throughout the world, really. I'm so blessed I got this position. You think an auditor is a boring job, man. Maybe it is, but I was so fortunate. They sent me around the world, and they wanted somebody they could trust that would say, hey, what's going on? We're building geographically this Fortune 500 company. The board wanted to know what's going on. And I was fortunate enough to do that and got to see the world. Just spent probably a year of my life in Australia, lived in Hong Kong 10 years, been to the UK, just around the world, beautiful places. We always had offices in these gorgeous places. And so I was really blessed, worked really hard to get to that point, and then started following my brother Jim. My brother Jim started this Gateway Pundit and back in 2004. And he would write me and say, Joe, man, we got this, I got 5 hits on this thing. It's like pretty exciting, right? But all of a sudden this thing just took off. These great people started supporting his work. He would put this stuff up. He'd call me and he'd go, like, what's going on? And it meant that somebody had picked it up like Instapundit, and they'd share his post, and they'd get all this traffic to his site. And he was so excited. And these people just loved him, and eventually the traffic just came straight to Jim's site, and I was in Australia the night of the 2016 election, and Jim calls me up. It was daytime there. It's like noon. I'm in a board meeting. I'm in a risk and an audit meeting, and I didn't give a damn what anybody was saying. I wanted to know what's going on with this election, you know. And a guy from Canada who didn't like Trump, but he liked me, and we teased each other. Well, who's going to win? I go, well, Trump. He goes, no way, Hillary. I'll bet you. So we bet. Of course, I won. And it was great because there was actually a Speech Bar CEO who was there at the same time. And as she's talking, I'm looking at this New York Times tracker, and it's going 65% Trump. By the time she was done, an hour later, it was 95% Trump. And I am feeling so good. And we had a board meeting a couple nights later, and I had a MAGA flag. This guy got a big old Make America Great Again flag. And this guy from Canada comes, "You got anything we can put up?" And I said, "Yeah, I got this flag." So when we all walked into the room like this for board meeting, up on the wall behind the table was this MAGA flag. That thing lasted about 5 minutes. We had to take it down. But I remember Jim calling me that day saying, and he did this. I'm like, no way, no way. That meant Trump was pulling ahead of Hillary. And it was such a great day. I got a picture of myself with a MAGA flag in front of the Sydney Harbor Bridge and in front of the Opera House. And you know, that's where this job took me. I'd always place myself where I could look out the window and see the Opera House and places like that. And it was such a blessing. And then I started writing for Jim shortly before that. Here I got this full-time job. I'm traveling all over the place, really working hard. And yet every night I'd try to put a post up, and we had some great success back then. Drudge Report was just on fire, and you got a Drudge link, and that was another. And we were both really happy about that. And I had some great success right away. I predicted Ted Cruz would be done in a month, and I predicted the day, and even almost to the delegate. And Drudge put that up 2 days in a row. I had the top story in the whole world, and I'm just this guy in Hong Kong taking a ferry, to work. And so that's kind of how I got hooked, and I wrote for years with Jim for about 4 years then, and then 2020. And I'm glad you brought that up. So all of a sudden, this COVID thing came out. And actually, we were in China on January 1st. My wife's Chinese, and we were visiting her family, and this thing was building. And so anyways, I remember looking at the numbers of the WHO and saw these things, they're like she shared, they're not right. They're commingling numbers. I could see I'm the only guy in the world, because this WHO that's pointing this thing out. And we got on, we put it up. Jim had the courage to, we're going to put this thing up. And then the next day, Alex Jones had us on InfoWars, and we're together sharing it, me and Hong Kong Jim here. And then the next day, I got doxxed by Media Matters. And you talk about, I was thinking about this, what you're saying, Sheila. We cannot share the information on these mass murderers. We cannot share all this information that's really pertinent and necessary for us to know. So again, so we can take and make good decisions. But they can dox me, and really, basically, that was pretty much it for my career. I've been with this company 20 years, and they loved me, and I loved them. I mean, we had, and the blessing was about 6 months prior to that, we had my 20-year anniversary. And if you see my most recent videos, you'll see this picture behind me of me shaking Trump's hand. Well, that picture is not me. They superimposed my face over Xi Jinping's body. And they gave that to me as my 20th anniversary gift. And I tell you what, that place rolled, because they all knew I loved Trump. And this girl she couldn't stop laughing, the girl who did it, she just loved that. And so that's really not me shaking Trump's hand, it's Xi Jinping. And but they gave me this big party 6 months before I left Hong Kong, because I'd reached 20 years. And one of the neatest things they said was, "Joe, not many of these guys are ever going to get to the U.S., And it was our second biggest office. They said, so they kind of have to, determine how their impression, what's the U.S. about. And they said, "Joe, you're I was the only guy in the U.S. over there. You give them a really good impression," they said. And I haven't forget that. I get choked up about that. But that was such a blessing, because I didn't know 6 months later I'd be saying bye to my buddies and having to head back to the States, because we separated because of Media Matters. And this is the kind of stuff that's happening to people that stand up for the truth. And it shouldn't happen, but it is happening. And so I came back here and we started writing more. I remember had another piece on COVID that was really huge that we put up at Gateway Pundit. It was 6% of the people that they're claiming are dying from COVID actually had COVID, only. Right. The rest, 94% had other, comorbidities, right? And that thing, we got like 10 fact checkers hitting us on that. They all used the same source, some guy who said he worked at Harvard or something. It was all bogus. We took the data from the CDC. Now, looking back now, here's the thing. The things that they hit you the most on and the hardest are the ones that you're on over the target. Because as we look back now, we know the whole thing was a scam. It wasn't. The mortality was closer to the flu. Elderly, children were almost immune to it. Elderly and the sick were the ones that should have been protected. And what did we do? We put sick people into the elderly homes. We put sick people into these homes where there's really sick children, like in Seattle and stuff. And the mortality blew up. And they were lying to us and it was a scam. And they didn't want us to know. And so that's you look back at some of these big stories, and then came the 2020 election, and maybe we were knocking it out of the park. And I can remember some guys reaching out to me, just smart people that reached out. Hey, Joe, look at this. One actuary that was really smart guy, senior guy at a major corporation, sent me this stuff. We looked at Pennsylvania's data. Remember how they locked us out of the room? We couldn't see what was going on for 3 days. And so what happened during that time, all of a sudden, Trump is ahead of Biden 2 million to 1 million on election day. And over that next 3 days, all of a sudden, Biden slowly pulls ahead. And then they certify for Biden. So this actuary looked at the data within a week after the election, we put this up. There was a pattern to this data. It didn't make sense. And so, we were dropping bombs on this, and I put that up, and nobody's ever refuted that. I mean, the data didn't make sense. Now, from my point of view, though, as Sheila mentioned, I was a professional auditor, I was a professional, finance guy. At one point, I oversaw the financial reporting on $1 billion block of business, traveled the world, did audits everywhere, like you shared, Sheila, and thank you for that. But this stuff didn't make sense, so I decided to start writing these books, and first books about what happened before the election. And the data's, Trump had 1.1 million people at his rallies. Remember those rallies? Yeah. They're freaking huge. I did the same thing in 2016. He crushed Hillary. In this election, it was worse. And Biden, of course, couldn't get out of the basement. When he did, he had circles on the floor, And so Trump had 1.1 million. Biden had like less than 2,000 people, according to my calculations. Nobody ever refuted that. Think of that number, that comparison. It doesn't make sense. And I write about big tech and what we knew of and big media and how they were so biased and so disgusting. And the deep state. My first chapter is on the deep state. And so the second book, I got into the details, and I kind of approached it the way an auditor would. First thing would be, the first thing that was obvious, hey, we were not given the opportunity to see what the hell is going on. They locked us out of the rooms. And when that happened, it was done. It was over. And we should have stopped right then. And it was not certifiable after that point. And I'll give you some comparisons. In the corporate world, we would have to do this every year. We called it Sarbanes-Oxley. So there's 3 things you look at when you're doing an audit. You want to make sure you have systems that work, and these things are drilled into people. We looked at this data. We would test it in and out and on all these systems. We have to have 100% confidence these systems work. We have to. And we sign off on it. And auditors do internal and external. The other thing that you have to have is support. If somebody's going to say, I've got made so much in sales, you got to make sure that you got all the receipts. It's all right there. We got to test it all. We got to validate and sign off on everything. And then, but the third thing that really came up about 20 years ago, about the time you started AbleChild, was Sarbanes-Oxley, where they said, hey, you've got to make sure now that all your processes are in place. You got to test them all every year. And if they don't work, you got to retest them. You got to keep testing them until they're all in place. And a big corporation will test somewhat like 1,000 major controls around the world and make sure everyone's in place. There's no room for any. They all have to be signed off on before the auditors are signed off on. We did a study here recently. Me and some people, Mike and Lori, who are here. There they are in the back of the room back there, and some others. And we come up with, we identified about 520 or so controls that should be in place in an election. We determined there's maybe 13 processes, maybe 100 sub-processes, and 500 and so of these controls. And when we looked at them, whether they're in place or not, we found out, well, about a third are in place in our election process. So that means 2/3 aren't even there, 36%. Now, we're accepting that for our election process, but for our financials, we've got to make sure every control is in place. So we're accepting this thing, believing it's as valid and accurate and transparent as our financials, our corporations. Corporations are held to huge standards, and with our elections, we're not at all. And so my second book, I talk about the processes. We never should have signed off because we couldn't get in the door. I talk about the numbers not making sense. There's patterns in the data. This doesn't make sense. I talk about all these other anomalies, like everybody that's followed this, there's 18 bellwether counties that always go to the president, like 17 out of 18. And they all went to Trump. And yet Biden wins the election. Hasn't happened in more than 100 years. And you start looking at all these anomalies, and then we start really looking at. I looked at the data. We came out with a huge post at the Gateway Pundit because we started seeing these glitches in the system. Remember, people look at this. Here's Trump ahead. Come back. They show the numbers. Like 3,000's been taken from Trump, 3,000 added to Biden, or 30,000, or whatever. We had 6 or 7 of those. Like, oh God, it'd be great to get our hands on the data, and we did the next day, as God would have it. Bam, here it was. And we put this piece up. Trump retweeted it twice. That thing probably got, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million hits. It was just, we were rocking it. The stuff was, and we were exhausted. I wanted to sleep. But this is the kind of stuff we kept seeing, and then eventually we looked at the systems, and all I had to do about the system, because it's such a hot issue, is just report what the government reported. This government entity called the CISA reported on these systems in Georgia, the Dominion systems. And they said, since the election, the entire election in Georgia was on these systems. And what they said was, these systems are not secure, a bad actor can hack in easily, and a bad actor could steal an election. Okay? And I'm telling you, in the corporate world, if we had a system that wasn't secure, it's taken out of production right now. Not tomorrow. Joe Altman here, super IT guy, really successful guy. Maybe Joe, raise your hand, wave to these guys if you want. Joe knows this. If a system's got security issues, you take it out, because you can't afford somebody coming in and putting malware on your system or stealing your intellectual property. It's done right now. And we're still using those systems in Georgia, and Raffensperger wants to use them in the next election. And this is the kind of stuff we're sitting back. And so I went through all this, and at the end of each chapter, in the second chapter, I end with this. And for this reason, the election never should have been certified. Right. Because from a professional auditing perspective, it never should have been certified. Right. Not even close. I'm angry about it. It's grotesque. And I was talking to our friends here from the group with Bobby Kennedy and Jr. And I was saying, that's the thing about this. We needed to ensure that this, that we have certifiable results, and we just don't have them. I think I was thinking of something else, but I just forgot it. But so my third book then was after the election. I just started talking about who was there to save us. Well, in Pennsylvania, they said, hey, we want to go in and see the county, and they even 2 days later went to a judge, and the judge said, yeah, you can go in, and then the sheriff wouldn't let us in. So for 3 days, we couldn't even get in there. Bill Barr, we're finding out more evidence that Jim's revealed and disclosed some more information out of Georgia, Michigan every day. There's a huge scandal there. Bill Barr covered it up. So our law enforcement wasn't there for us. And then I talked to Rudy Giuliani. He tried to go to these legislatures, and he said, without exception, every one of these places that he went to, there was 2 or 3 Republicans that weren't going to do a damn thing. They called themselves Republicans, right? We got a lot of those. And because of that, he couldn't get anything done. And so then we turned to the courts. And like Sidney Powell, she ends up with 4 big cases, and people criticize her after because they failed. And the facts were, of her 4 cases in 4 different states, they landed in the hands of 3 Obama judges. And how does that happen? Because these people, they didn't even look at her case. And the Texas case, I had a guest on my show from Italy, and she laughed, saying, how could the Supreme Court not hear the Texas case? Trump didn't have standing? Are you kidding me? Really, it's so clear. Are you kidding me? And so we didn't have anybody there who was for us. And so I think really you guys are doing incredible work. We've got to win this next election. And we're not going to, God only knows what's going to happen if they win it again. I mean, there's 1,000 people sitting in prison right now from January 6th that I think are innocent. I had one guy who's a plumber who was there. He said, Joe, I'd like to know how much water was used at the Capitol that day. I'm like, God, only a plumber would say this. And what he said is, there was no porta potties outside. He goes, I wonder how many people went in there to go to the bathroom. And maybe. But this is the kind of stuff that they think through a lot of this. And they're sinister. They're not dumb. They're sinister. Trump said this. And we've got to be really smart in this next election. We cannot allow this to happen again. This is a great country, and the only thing we've got, between us and more tyranny and, more fascism, more communism is our election. I talked to Michelle Bachmann a couple days ago, who Jim and I have met, and she's just a beautiful lady, really one of the greatest thinkers around. And she said, this isn't America anymore. And she was talking about Mark Stein's case a couple days ago, where he's found, he loses this case in D.C. and has to pay a bunch of money for saying the truth. And how many of the people here, we get hit for saying the truth. And it's a great, shot in the arm from Sheila here to say, hey, keep doing it. And what's our choice? Really, what is our choice? And I know there's a lot of people out there that want to help. I think our job needs to be too, here's what you can do to help. We need to do a better job communicating that. But I think of Sheila, and 20-some years ago, started this AbleChild. Had no idea who it was or who she was. And I was telling her about the bamboo shoot. And I thought it was 20 years that you had to water it every day, and then it finally grows. Well, it's 5 years. But for 5 years, you got to water this seed every day, and then after 5 years, shoots right up. And Sheila's had to do that with AbleChild for 20 years. And day after day, day after day. And I'm telling you, Sheila, you are right where you need to be, and we're behind you, and you need to be strong. Because now the fire comes. Because you are on it. You are absolutely on it. And the wonderful thing, in a way, is that we all know today who Big Pharma is. And she's been not knowing it, but taking on our government and Big Pharma. And she showed an $80 billion industry. And there aren't many companies that make $1 billion a year. It's a big deal. And our government throws that money around like it's nothing. And I'm telling you, nobody knows what's going on in that budget. I oversaw $1 billion. I found out a few years later, we had a contract in Afghanistan. I'm like, what? I didn't know that. But that's the kind of stuff, it's too much. And that's what's happening with this country, which is just such a mess. It needs so much work. But you're taking on some monsters. The good news is, thanks to Bobby Kennedy and the Gateway Pundit and a lot of people here, people know who Big Pharma is today. And Steve and James. People know who Big Pharma is. And we know that, and you know what's great? It's not a good name. And so when Sheila says Big Pharma, that these Big Pharma guys are going after our kids and forcing parents to hand over their rights so they can put our kids on drugs that we don't want them to put on, she's absolutely right. And these are the voices come out of nowhere that save the world. So thank you so much. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you to Steve Bannon, Marine. Did you play volleyball? Did you make it to the Olympic trials?
I did try out for the national team, U.S. national team.
She's a pretty talented girl. But without further ado, I'm gonna thank you all so much. I'm so honored to be here. It's wonderful to be with family. Jim and I have cheered each other on for years. I was thinking about an event. We used to run track. We had good days and bad days. I remember once, and I share this story. I ran the 400 meters in 8th grade, and I freaking These guys smoked me, and they were like horses, thoroughbreds, and I'm just running clock, clock, clock. I just got smoked, and I can't breathe. I finished just one lap around the track, and I walk up to this high school kid who was taking time at this big meet, and I'm barely able to talk. I said, "What's my time?" And the guy goes, "Well, I don't have a calendar." Not one of my better races. And maybe that's the message. Get in the race that's yours. And so what I ended up doing is really, through various events, ended up moving up to the distance and started running. And Jim and I and our brother Chris, for a couple of years there, we were known around the state. We could really run. But the neat thing, and our parents loved it. I loved it. I loved watching, good runners. I remember one race, my mom said, Jim was in 800 meters, and he was in 5th place going into the last quarter of the race. And one by one, he started passing these guys. And he comes around right in front of the home crowd, and it's a big stadium, and there's people cheering. And my mom was so happy for him, but the thing she noticed is I was out there in the field yelling at him, "Go, Jim, go." And that's what we did for each other. And that's what we're doing here. And that's what's important. Thank you, Sheila.
Final award. It goes to our undercover agent for the people, James O'Keefe. James has the gift of giving you courage you never thought you had. It happened to me. I had never publicly spoken out that I was related to Comey, the former fired FBI director. Yet I found myself publicly admitting that, not an easy task, when James told me the story how the FBI broke down his door and stole his phone and his journalistic tools. I knew I wanted to help him in any way possible. James came to Vero Beach a little over a year ago. James walked into the event after doing a radio show interview on the way with the cell phone to his ear, speaking to an FBI agent potentially coming forward with inside information on the massive corruption that exists in the FBI. Multitasking at the highest level, he poured out his energy into the room. By the end of the evening, James would be embraced by the wrong side of history, the former FBI Director Comey's aunt, my mother, with love and support. She has read all of James' books. Right, Mom? His work on Big Pharma, the Pfizer expose, was grabbing attention. In fact, I believed it received over 50 million views. It was shortly after the event in Vero, his entire organization that he created would stab him in the back and rob him of his work. What would break a normal man only made James stronger. He wasted no time pulling the pieces of his life back together. We call that survival of the dark night of the soul. Few make it through that ordeal. His work is dangerous, important, and powerful. He approaches it with such a beautiful spirit filled with courage and tenacity. He has exposed the dark side of our society that has its grip on all of us, that we need to see and don't want to see. He is willing, able, and ready for the next adventure, an adventure we should all go on with him. You just feel so inspired around him. This is why we honor him tonight. We recognize James as a tireless, relentless, and creative journalist for the people. He makes us laugh, and each new undercover expose helps us to see the unseen. He captures a view that is often out of sight.
I'm passionate about not just exposing big government, but also exposing big business. Shouldn't they be held to the same standards as government organizations that receive taxpayer money? This is about something very fundamental in this country. I don't know what direction this country is going in, but journalists everywhere have to rise up. And the number one question I get asked is, well, aren't you worried, right? Aren't you afraid? And I say, no, I try not to worry about the things that I can't control. I mean, I don't even know what the media is anymore. The media is owned by most of the people I investigate. Like, for example, Pfizer controls and funds most of these media organizations. This company, BlackRock, owns a large percentage. People are so afraid, and it's that fear that we have to fight. This is not the sort of world that we want to live in. So we do have to find some brave souls. You can choose to be afraid, or you can choose to know that you only have one life to live. You better get busy living or get busy dying.
Please welcome James O'Keefe.
Well, did you know that my father's best friend went to high school with Jim Comey? In Bergen County, New Jersey, that's right. The former FBI director went to high school with Ben Calici, my dad's best friend. So that was very fascinating. We were trying to get some hidden camera action going there. Tried to get the hidden camera to the aunt. Is that the aunt? Your mother. It's your mother. I was hoping you could deliver a little package to Mr. Comey for me. Maybe a watch camera. Does he live in New Jersey? It's one-party consent state. You can legally record there. So I'm always trying to recruit, Sheila. Always recruit, always empowering. Always empowering. So I have some videos to show you today. I'm going to take you on a journey through the visual realm, cinema verite, the spiritual realm, the metaphysical realm, the FBI raids, the undercover. I just got back from the border, actually. I was in Tucson. Tucson, that's right. You're never going to believe what's every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, On the Inside. We're trademarking this, On the Inside with James O'Keefe, because we get inside these places. Usually, we get inside, we used to just infiltrate, go undercover, but now we put cameras on the people who are already on the inside. So it's like investigative journalism, Venn diagram espionage. And we go in there, and I was just on the border, and I almost got killed. Almost only counts in horseshoes, right? But I was on the border, and we got inside the secret migrant camp, and one of our guys almost got kidnapped by the cartel, went in there, extracted him, got the recording, so that's coming out Wednesday. Sheila, I've known for, about a year and a half? I met Sheila right before my board fired me. If you've ever been a CEO fired by the board, it is a wild experience. And I learned a lot. And I'm just going to read a message that Sheila sent me, because I thought this was really, really profound. And she said, this is after this happened, because I was really struggling, and I'm doing much better now. She said, the end time are here, right is wrong, and wrong is right. We know this, but that isn't a bad thing for God's warriors. This is a text message that Sheila sent me about a year ago. She said, it's actually a time to know we are fully protected and have an opportunity to save others. What a blessing. And those board members, James, they wanted to be you because you appear to be everything they're not. That actually gives me the ability, and that gives you the ability to see them in a more forgiving light. Your former partners saw in you what they could not be. Another blessing, you get to take that with you. Very profound statement. Very profound. So, but let's get started with the presentation. Get out your popcorn, get your tequila shots, here we go. You can't make this S-H-I-T up. That's what I should have called it. I called it OMG. Why? Because OMG is a triple pun. First of all, it's my last name, O'Keefe Media Group. Second of all, it's the most commonly used hashtag on Instagram, so they can't censor me. And third, it's what you say when you're about to see what you see. Oh my God. All right, Stephen, let's get it going. The clicker's not working. That's why we have a backup plan. So this is me. I've posed as pimps, drug dealers, terrorists, you name it, I do it. I pose as a gay guy, not gay, but took one for the team. I'm just kidding. No, we don't touch anybody. Let's play this clip, roll this clip. This is last week in Tucson, Arizona. Let's go back a moment. Here we go.
Now, the Tucson Police Department is heavily fortifying a ramada on the corner of Palo Verde and Julian Drive in Tucson next to the airport. The location is secretly housing military-age illegal immigrants. Our team went undercover. I posed as a homeless vagrant drunk holding a 40 and scoped the perimeter. I spoke to Officer Kristen Moritz. She told us that it's none of our business what goes on inside there.
No, ma'am.
I need you off this property.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Go there. Where is this property right here? What about this one?
How that one? Stay off.
Who are you?
I'm the Tucson Police Department. I'm a police officer.
What is this place? I want a room here.
You can't stay here. They're full.
Why not?
They're full.
But they got them. Where's them?
Zippers undone too.
Where is it?
It's your business. You go.
Why is it my business? I'm a taxpaying citizen here.
All right, next slide. Next slide. So what's remarkable, this is like a fortified compound, a ramada, like this country, I don't know what's happening, but billions of dollars get funded and they're shuffling in, illegal immigrants, refugees who lie about their sponsorship. So I couldn't get in there as the homeless guy. So he put hidden cameras on illegal immigrants and went in there. Go ahead and roll the next clip.
Standing in front of the Ramada Inn here. Ramada Inn, Tucson Airport. A police officer told us to mind our own business. We see migrants, illegal immigrants standing in the rooms and told us not to go in. We're going in anyway. In order to get inside the facility, we put a hidden camera on a Mexican illegal immigrant whistleblower in order to find out what exactly they were hiding inside this secret Ramada compound, and who or what was behind it, who was paying for it, and why they were so hyper-vigilant in keeping all of that a secret. We will call the Mexican illegal immigrant Caesar.
¿Para qué esperan? ¿Para qué la niña?
Porque ya están en el boleto. Ya están en el boleto.
Oh, para el aeropuerto. Ok. ¿Para dónde vas tú?
Houston.
¿Para Houston? Ok. ¿Te lo compraron ellos?
Buses take illegal.
All right, so let's go to the next clip. So it's a long story. You can watch it on YouTube, but this Casas Elitis group is behind this, and he recorded all this footage. So I take off my homeless disguise and confront these people. You've been caught on tape. Here's what we have. We'd like your comment. And they call the sheriff on me. They always call the police on me, every single time. I don't know what they hope to achieve by doing that. And I've learned, we talked about this at dinner. Go ahead and arrest me. I'm standing on a public street. But go ahead and play this clip.
Sir, what is all this? Yes, you do have to tell me.
And finally, took off my homeless disguise.
What are you gonna do, sir? Yeah, it's called a microphone. Why are you so scared of us filming you, sir?
I don't trust you. I
What?
don't know what you're about.
Yeah, my name is James O'Keefe. I'm an investigative reporter. And why did you tell me that it's none of my business?
Because this is not your business.
So we're standing here at the Ramada, Tucson Airport. I pretended to be a homeless vagrant. Talked to the police officer. She told me it was none of my business.
I need you off this property.
Where is this, migrant place? Where is it?
None of your business. You go.
This guy told me it's none of my business. Scared to death of anybody filming. He said he's calling the sheriff, the Pima County Sheriff. They're calling the cops. So we're waiting for the sheriff to show up. And we're in trouble. We're in trouble, guys. The sheriff's coming.
They always call the cops on me every time. It's become a running joke at OMG.
Here he comes. Pima County Sheriff. This one here says they want to get us for trespassing. You want me to be locked up? Like with my hands behind my back? You think I give a shit about that? You don't know what I've been through. This guy, get a shot of him. He's testifying against us right here. Here come the police. We'd love to be a fly on the wall. Here comes another one. They got backup on backup on backup here. Hi. Good. What is your name and badge number?
So it says, go to the next slide. These cops, you can't tell, and I'm showing this for a reason. I have thousands of videos, but I'll play a few for you. the cops, are they good people or bad people, or are they following orders? So this extraordinary moment I'm about to show you, this interaction goes on for half an hour, and the bus is pulling up with the illegal immigrants. You see the bus right there. And the bus pulls up behind the sheriff, and the sheriff is standing between me and the bus. I say, Sheriff, there's a bus trafficking people behind you. You may want to turn around. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, sir, there's a bus right behind you trafficking people into that Ramada Inn. And he's like, sir, I don't know what you're talking. It was like the most remarkable piece of photojournalism. And we'll go ahead and roll this clip, play the video.
This is, sir.
You guys want, I guess, tracking with what I'm saying?
I'm not going to go on that property.
Okay.
And there was literally a bus right behind the sheriff, and he's like, I don't know. There's a bus filled with illegal immigrants coming to a hotel.
If you guys were to come back onto the property after we instruct you guys to get your formally trespass, it would be a criminal offense.
Are you just following orders? There's a bus filled with illegal immigrants driving right behind him. Sheriff acting like he doesn't know what's going on. I asked him if he's just following orders. Are you following orders?
We have to arrest you guys, all right?
Historically, that doesn't work so well.
You guys don't do that for the night, all right?
What is your name and badge number?
My name is Libby Carter. Badge number is 908.
Is that a bus filled with illegal immigrants behind you?
I'm not sure.
You know it's a bus. Don't lie to me. You know that's
Do you have any other questions about
Yes. Why did you just lie to me that you're not sure what that is? That a bus filled with illegal immigrants?
Sir, I'm not on the bus.
And next slide. And you can actually see, if you go to the next slide, the picture, Stephen, there's a picture, next one, of there's faces, the windows are all fogged up. Looks like they were doing bongs in there or something like this. And right behind it, and this is the gaslighting, this is the absolute, they cover the wool over your eyes sort of business. The injustice, the lies in our society, and everywhere you go, everything you do, next slide. This one was the second most watched video of my life. This was last week. Remember that old ad for The Daily Show when they hired Jon Stewart, and the guy's like, Jon Stewart, a gay man, and not gay. Not gay. I'm that confident in my masculinity. I will do anything for this country. So I meet with this guy. He's the cybersecurity policy analyst and foreign affairs, and he works at the White House. And he went on a gay date with me. Now, you have, I know you have so many questions. Question number one, how did he not recognize you? Question number two, what did your disguise look like? We'll get to that in a moment. Question number three, what was the reveal? Literally, you know what my disguise was? My disguise? It was a pair of glasses. And I dyed my hair orange. Now, there's one point in the tape, before I roll the tape. Well, you know what? Roll the tape. Roll the tape. Roll the tape.
I'm good at keeping secrets, so I manage two federal agencies, the State Department and USAID.
So when you say it's like security, like you're protecting
The networks of the federal agencies. You give all your information to them.
the mission is to protect information.
We are like the president's voice when we go into meetings in terms of discussing and promoting the president's priorities.
Is he going to be the nominee?
Yes. And she will be the vice president nominee.
Yeah.
There was a debate about removing her from the ticket, but sadly we didn't. On her in May.
But with him,
Yeah, I know.
he's got dementia.
Well, he's definitely slowing down.
But they know that he has it. They're not going to say it. They're not going to say it publicly.
It's easy to
Well, why
tell
not?
on her since she's not popular, but she's being removed. First black lady, by the president from the contact that what's the message you gonna send to like the African American voter? How would you spin that? People would be like, like she's a woman and she's multiracial. I think that they're really concerned about that.
But they won't say it.
Pause for 1 second, Steve. So at one point in this moment, this man goes to Harvard, Oxford, Kennedy School of Government. He's probably got a security clearance. He's probably violating it right now. I'm really good at my job. And at one point in the meeting, you might be thinking, well, how do you get these guys to say these things? Well, most people are narcissists, that's number one. This is Washington, D.C., that's number two, spiritually devoid place. But at one point, this guy actually does ask me a question about myself. They never ask me questions about myself. And he goes, enough about me, what about you? And I'm like, you're like James Bond, you're so interesting. He's like, oh, thank you. And we keep going. And he never asked me another question. People want to talk about themselves. There's a great book about this I read called It's Not About Me. People think, James Bond, you have fancy Aston Martins. No. You just ask people questions about themselves, and that's how you get to spill the beans. Play the rest of the tape.
If they say it publicly,
Correct.
violence
Yeah,
is, they can't say it publicly.
No, they got
They
to
say it privately, but they won't say it publicly.
Correct.
Violence
Pause.
is,
That's the money shot. We can't say it publicly. It's the deception. And if there's one thing voters don't like, it's being deceived. It's the law of non-contradiction. I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, socialist, terrorist, communist, conservative, constitutionalist. You can't, one thing can't be itself and its opposite. So him saying, well, this is the way things really are, but we're gonna have to lie to the people. That right there is the money shot. And as long as people, and this is how we're able to do what we do, as long as the official Potemkin talking point is one thing, and everyone in bars talks normally. Now, what's remarkable about this interaction is eventually I take off my glasses, I take off my disguise. And he goes into official talking point where he's like, the president is very concerned about cybersecurity. It's like, dude, we were having a conversation 5 minutes ago and you were a normal human being. So play the rest of this.
they can't say it publicly.
No, they got
They
to
say
go
it
the line.
privately.
I'm just telling you what I've heard. Like,
You're just telling me the truth.
does it make sense? No, but that's what I've heard.
And
I've had a meeting with Michelle Obama at one point when I was an intern, and someone asked her, will you ever run for office? And she said no. In fact, like,
Really?
I've seen all the shit my husband has had to go through, and that does not interest me. People would be like, well, I don't think we should have to get the vaccine. I'm like, you're not going to get the vaccine, and then you're going to go expose my family in the hospital.
Exactly.
There we go. And then there's the reveal clip. Stephen, the next clip.
You're unlike vaccinated COVID. Like,
So you work in cybersecurity for the White House, and my question is, what are you doing on a meeting with James O'Keefe? What type of cybersecurity operation you guys run over there? Obviously not.
Okay, next slide. You see how he went into talking point mode activated. We are running a good cybersecurity operation. The president is very concerned about. Dude, you're not doing a very good job. American Muckraker is my book. I'm going to tell you a couple war stories here, and then I don't want to be here all night, but I want to talk about the Pfizer story. That's a big one. We'll get to that in a moment. American Muckraker. What is a muckraker? You've all read about Upton Sinclair in high school, The Jungle, undercover work, investigative reporting. The intention here is to make public disclosures about public officials doing things in private they are not willing to acknowledge they are doing. And we all do things that we are not willing to publicly acknowledge we are doing. Sometimes it's something in our private life or our professional life. We all have skeletons in our closet. We're all human beings. But the intent is to make society more ethical and transparent. And then in this book, I get a little bit into your issues about pharma and the media, and I come to realize that the media is owned, a wholly owned subsidiary of this, and that's not right. Journalists ought to operate fearlessly and impartially. That is to say, without fear or favor. That was the slogan of the New York Times in 1896, to operate without fear, without favor. No one tells me what to do, no one tells me what not to do. That's what journalists need to do. But if you're a reporter working for a corporation and you get really close to the story, someone high up will say, no, you need to stop. Stop that, you're getting too close to the sun. So I learned early on in my life that I had to be the leader, the CEO, the chairman, the owner of my own destiny. And I created a group called Project Veritas when I was 24. I met Jim Hoft in St. Louis at a Tea Party convention with Andrew Breitbart, 2009, after that Acorn Pimp Hooker video. That was remarkable. Next slide. Next slide. We're going to skip through some of these. Skip. Go back to this Orwell quote. 1984, also one of my favorite books. Also one of my favorite years because it was the year that I was born. Whistleblowers and insiders, there's a great quote, if you're a man, you are the last man, your kind is extinct. And I think that we're entering a new era of whistleblowing, which I'll get into. Let's skip a few of these slides, keep going. This is a great example of something that we've done, the Jeffrey Epstein story. And pharma and media, this woman worked for ABC News, which is owned by Disney. Disney is a children's company, by the way. And there's irony there because she's caught on the hot mic that's in the commercial break. You're wearing a lav mic, and she starts talking normally, takes off talking point mode. And she says that her bosses will not let her run the Epstein story. Why? Because the president of ABC News is a friend of the British royal family and Bill Clinton. Listen to this.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. She gave pictures, she gave everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. Wow. There will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
What an amazing moment. Let's go to the next slide. This is a remarkable moment between Tucker Carlson and this woman talking about how the media, the people don't trust anybody, so they come to us. Go ahead.
They trusted James O'Keefe more than they trusted their own employers at ABC. That tells you a lot, I would say. Wilson Francis, it's great to see you tonight. Thank you for that.
Let's go to the IBM story. Let's skip a few clips here. We've got a lot of stories here, but we got to move to the IBM story. Keep going. Yeah, we did a lot of stuff on the border here over the last few days, last few weeks, since this story in Phoenix. And but go back 2 slides. Okay, so this is the CEO of IBM, Arvind Krishna. Let's go to the next clip. Next one, right here. Play this.
Underrepresented and gender, you got to move both forward by a percentage. That leads to a plus on your bonus. By the way, if you lose part of your bonus. I'm not trying to finesse this. So for blacks, we should try to get towards 13-something%. On Hispanics, you got to get into the mid-teens. So let me say it. Asians in the US are not an underrepresented minority in a tech company.
So this clip was the CEO of IBM. It was given to us by someone inside of IBM that was fairly highly placed, a whistleblower inside IBM. And there was a reaction tape where the CEO of IBM, then he had an emergency all-staff call where he got everyone in a room, and he says, whatever you do, don't react to this tape. Don't give O'Keefe a reaction. And then like 7 people inside IBM leaked the tape to us. There was probably like, I want to say 100 people at IBM, over 100 that came to us after we published the story. 100. So this is a little clip of Arvind Krishna reacting.
We will deal with it. I would recommend all of you should not respond. Anything there will just cause more of a response.
You mean like the response that you're giving right now to everyone? You mean like don't respond like how you're responding?
So I would highly recommend don't feed this thing.
You're feeding this thing right now. I'm feeding myself too.
However, the principles are just laid out. If you get asked by friends and family, you can feel free to talk about it in that context.
Or you can just leak to OMG, which is what over 100 people are currently doing.
Next. So after this happened, just play this video. These are all the messages that we got from people inside IBM. Wow. I've never seen anything like it. I sound like Trump. You've never seen anything like it. It's absolutely doing a terrific job, okay? The messages would come in every few minutes. Everyone has experienced discrimination, prejudice, passed over for a promotion. If you're Asian, you're fired. And I think this is the future. I think that, look at these tips. These are all actual tips from within people working for IBM. And you begin to realize that the people in these institutions in society are really upset. And the institutions have betrayed our principles. So the army of journalists are out there, okay? And we're going to empower them to expose what needs to be happening. Look at all these people. would require a full-time team just to read them, let alone investigate what's happening. All right, let's go to the next thing. Keep going. Fast forward to the pharma stuff. I want to talk about Pfizer. I'm going to close out with Pfizer. Skip this. Here we go, Pfizer. So this is around the time I met Sheila. Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer. You know that ad on television? Brought to you by Pfizer. Play the ad roll for the television. Next. Keep going.
Very good.
There we go. Go back. There we go.
America is brought to you by Pfizer. CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer. Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer. ABC Newsnight Live. Brought to you by Pfizer. Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer. CNN Tonight. Brought to you
Okay, we get the idea. And we take it for granted next. We take it for granted watching this that it's very difficult to be impartial when you're brought to you by something like that. Let's go to the investigation. Keep going. Okay, so this story, this was a year ago, last week, another gay date. My investigative reporter, not gay. Took one for the team. Let's go to the video. Oh, we don't have the video yet. Keep going. Keep going. So this was actually, let's see, we have that clip. Next one. Play it.
Pfizer ultimately is thinking about mutating COVID?
Well, that's not what we say to the public. No, don't tell anyone this building. You're gonna publish your time. We're exploring, like, no, you know the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is, like, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we can focus on uncompletely vaccines, right? So we have to do that. If we're gonna do that, though, that's a risk of, like, as you can imagine, no one wants to be having a pharma company mutating viruses. We are very controlled to make sure that this virus that you mutate doesn't bring something like, you know, it goes everywhere.
Something crazy.
It's the way that the virus started. And moving on. To be honest, like, it makes no sense that these viruses pop out of nowhere. Like,
Yeah, I know.
Saying all the things that we suspect, but he said it out loud. It originated in Wuhan, where don't tell anybody again. And I would say, could you say that again, just the way you said it? Just say that into my button camera, would you? All right, next slide. So when this happens, and I decide that the date gets up to go to the bathroom, and I step in. You remember the old To Catch a Predator? So I walk into this, I sit down, and what's remarkable about this video you're about to watch is, first of all, this is in Brooklyn, New York, under the Dumbo neighborhood. This is a pizza restaurant. How many people saw this? Raise your hand. Okay, everybody saw this. Yeah, this was like the most watched video ever. And first of all, I'm confronting this guy, and there's a picture of Jesus on the wall, which is very unusual because what you're about to watch is this guy go through the 5 stages of grief in 2 minutes. Let's play the next clip.
Hey there. Is this seat taken? Hi. You work for Pfizer. My question for you is, why does Pfizer want to hide from the public the fact that they're mutating the COVID viruses?
is this real life? This is absurd.
Why does Pfizer want to hide from the public that they're mutating the COVID virus?
Oh my God.
You're on video.
Pause.
You're on.
That's why I call the company OMG. Let's keep playing. Keep playing it.
Video. Mutating COVID virus.
Next. What's going on here? What's
Well,
happening?
first of all, I'm literally a liar.
Pause. So he says, I'm literally a liar. I'm literally a liar. But believe everything I'm telling you right now. Strange. Keep going.
He's on video. Whoa. You're saying we're exploring how the virus keeps mutating.
Yes,
one of the things we're exploring is, why don't we mutate the virus?
What's happening? By really getting the cops here right now. I was trying to impress a person on a date by lying.
You're trying to impress a person on a date because nothing makes you horny like talking about mutating viruses. Wow. These are the people that make our medical decisions in this country. I know what you're thinking. He's a low-level employee, Jay. No, he's not low-level. He's number 3 below the CEO. He got his MD from Yale, and he's a director at Pfizer. So he's not low-level. He's almost 40 years old. Let's play the next video.
I'm not even a scientist by background, you know, but I came from a consulting firm that does business. This is absurd.
Please don't touch me.
This is absurd.
So, please do call the cops.
Pause.
Please do.
Now they're going to call the police on me. Every single time. Every single time they call the police. They just have like this reaction. Police! Which is ironic because they want to defund the police. It's almost just like a demon that's come alive. Let's keep playing.
He's starting to call the police. Okay, he grabbed the microphone. The question is, why is he calling the police?
Next. Yeah, he's very scared. By the way, the guys in the back are just making pizzas like nothing's happening. This is just another day in Brooklyn. Keep going.
Mutating viruses? Do you not work for Pfizer? Sir, do you not work for Pfizer? Do you work for... Do you currently work for Pfizer, yes or no? Do you currently work for Pfizer, yes or no? So you don't work for Pfizer?
So we had all these screenshots from another Pfizer whistleblower that verified that he did. You know, what's interesting about the media is this video was viewed like, 100 million, this one 100 million times. If you Googled the video, you'd find nothing. And they were taking down the fact that this man ever existed. And Google actually created a special page that said, I'm sorry, but things are happening so quickly right now that we can't give you information. And mainstream media are like, well, Google says that this doesn't exist. It's really bizarre. And you all know how it works, but it really is twisted. And let's go to the next stage of grief.
He doesn't want me to leave, ma'am. He wants the cops here, but he doesn't want me to leave. So I'm in a little bit of a predicament because she's asking me to leave, but he doesn't want me to leave. So what should we do?
I didn't know what to do. It's like irrationality. And then the guy locks us in the restaurant. Like from the Bronx Tale, like locks the door so that I can't leave, which is a misdemeanor. It's false imprisonment. You can't make this stuff up. Let's go to the next stage of grief.
He's filming the restaurant owner right now. He's filming her. I don't know why he's filming her. Would you like me to leave? Because he's asking me not to leave, and he's consenting to my presence. Ma'am, are we allowed to just stay and ask a few questions? It's pretty remarkable that they call the police on us every time we show up and ask questions.
Next one. This one gets violent when we'll go back to the
one. I'd like to leave. Please unlock the door. Please unlock the door. Please unlock the door. Please unlock the door. 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 This is
pause. And then the Pfizer director, the mRNA director at Pfizer, takes the iPad, because I showed him the videos on the iPad, and he starts smashing the iPad on the ground as if the only location of those videos are on that particular iPad. I mean, it kind of looks like a sitcom, but it almost looks, it looks too crazy to be fictional. It's a weird genre. I call it cinema verite. That's why we call it OMG. Oh my God, yes, that's exactly right. Now you're getting the point. Let's play the rest of the violent altercation.
I'm trying to get unlock the door. Unlock the door. Unlock the door. Unlock the door.
Oh my God. It is not. Stop. Let go of me. Now you're hurting me.
I think everyone in this room knows someone like this that you've come across at some point in your life. Everyone knows this archetype, this person, what are they? This is not a stupid person. He's Yale educated. He's a director at Pfizer. But for some reason, when you expose them, right, it's like a flashlight in a dark room. The power of the flashlight, they don't know what to do. You're revealing something about them and what they're doing that they don't want to publicly acknowledge that they're doing. And it's extremely powerful. In fact, it's much more powerful than anything else you could do. In this country, we have, there's thousands and thousands of shows and commentators and writers, and there's very, very, very little actual journalism. There's no really new information. It's a bunch of people talking about, what they think, which doesn't serve much of, it makes money, but it doesn't serve much of a purpose. But what we must do is expose them for precisely who they are. I'm not a chemist or a pharmacist, I'm a journalist. But this was very revealing. Go to the next slide.
What is going on here? You cannot just record people like that. It's not okay. It's not okay.
Let's go. Let's go. Come on. We're in New York City. This is remarkable.
Pause. I had to pull my journalist out of there because she wanted to go into brawl mode. I'm like, let's get out of here. That's remarkable people I've worked with over the years. Keep going.
What you just witnessed here.
The next slide. And we tried to find our car, but our car was missing. And the Pfizer executive had laid down in the street in front of the car so that it couldn't move. It was a protest or something like that. So we had to walk blocks to find a cab. So keep going. Next. So anyway, so in kind of closing, a week later I was fired by my board of directors at Project Veritas, the company I founded, and that was a year ago this week. And I wrote an essay about that this week. I wrote a note. I told Jim I wrote the note, and there's so much to say. I could write books about what occurred, but I'm stronger because of it. The timing of this was absolutely bizarre, but I don't have any evidence of a bribe or anything like that. It's possible. I don't know that to be true, except for the circumstantial evidence. And what did they think people were going to assume? It was really bad timing, so they were either stupid or compromised, or possibly both. And when you do this sort of work, you get attacked repeatedly, constantly, all the time. It's just part of your life. It's just non-stop. I know you know what I'm talking about. It just does not end. It's constantly. And you just kind of get used to it. You just learn to live with that pain. And we all understand what pain is, what suffering is. We all have gone through that in various degrees. And I could tell you 100 stories about all the things. And you mentioned the raid. There's a clip here of the raid. And I'll just, before I play this clip, it was a pounding and really loud, the loudest door knock you've ever heard, pounding on the front door of my apartment at 6 a.m. on a Saturday in Westchester, that's upstate New York State, an hour north of the city. And when I heard the door knocking, I knew that it was the FBI. I knew that it was the feds. So I ran to the door, and it's pitch black. It's 6 a.m. I'm not a morning person. And I go to open the door, and I realize, well, gee, if I open this door the wrong way, they might shoot me, So I say, I'm opening the door, and I open the door, and there's like 10 agents. They got guns, they got tactical vests, they got Velcro FBI letters on their vests. They got flashlights in my eyes so I can't see. They put me in handcuffs. I've been arrested by the FBI twice. I may be the only guy you've ever met. I'm a journalist, and I've been arrested by the FBI twice. Maybe that's because I am a journalist, not despite the fact that I'm a journalist. And I said, am I under arrest? I said, no. And they brought me in the hallway, took me out, handcuffs off, and they showed me a search warrant. It said, transportation of stolen documents across state lines and extortion or blackmail, because I had asked Joe Biden for comment about that diary. It's not blackmail to ask someone for comment. It's your journalistic duty. So I could write a whole book about this, but eventually they took my phones. They still have my phones. It's now 3.5 years later. So play the clip. This is the FBI raid.
I'm sorry, so what is this regarding? This is the search warrant. Open up.
I love how that one FBI agent made sure her mascara was on. She put her eyelashes on for that morning. This was recorded on a hidden camera. So my apartment is basically just clothes and books. There's not really much in there. Tossed some stuff around for 2 hours, and then took out their DSLR camera, took photos, and walked away. Left me sitting on the floor in a state of absolute shock. It's hard to describe how it feels. You watch it in the movies, and you've read the books, and everyone's seen the movies, but it's just, I guess the feeling is akin to like kind of a PTSD, because when you go through the federal court system, which is the Orwell thing, Department of Justice, Department of Injustice, when you're an innocent man, I was talking to Camden about this earlier today, when you have done nothing wrong, it's actually much more traumatic than when you have done something wrong, because when you have done something wrong, at least you know what the thing is going to be. But when you are innocent and they point guns at your head, then the trauma, the fear is the unknown. What are they doing? Like, what are they trying to get me on? Transportation of stolen documents, I mean, this is the joke I always tell. Do you know what it's called? At the Washington Post or at the New York Times, when journalists transport documents that were stolen, it's called Tuesday. That's what journalists do. They publish and sometimes handle documents that are often stolen by somebody else. That's when an investigative reporter deals in unsanctioned information. And it's a constitutional right to receive information. In this case, we didn't believe this was stolen. I certainly didn't steal it, but if someone drops something off at my door, I'm gonna look into it. So it was very Kafkaesque. It was like, what am I supposed to do? You want me not to look into this? But I did do the right thing, and then they punished me for it. So, there was a few days of real intense fear. I would say the fear takes over, and it's the unknown, and it changes you. I think probably these experiences combined, and there's 100 of them. I mean, I could tell you literally 100 stories just like that. And after a while, you just choose faith over fear. That's it. It just doesn't affect you anymore. And then, there's this great book in Muckraker. I wrote this book, American Muckraker, and at the end of the first chapter, I cite an old school gumshoe journalist named Günter Wallraff. He was an undercover reporter from Germany, and he would say the hunter becomes the hunted. That eventually these sorts of people fear us more than we fear them. And I could see in the faces of the agents, they were like, this is kind of bad that I'm pointing a gun at this guy and taking his notebooks. This is not right. Why do they do it? They do it for the money and the pension and the paycheck. So eventually an FBI whistleblower came to me with more documents about what occurred, and that we released that. And I think we can go all the way to the end, Stephen, for a minute. There's all these articles that came out. Eventually, even the left-wing journalists were saying this is crazy, this is wrong, that what's happening. Ed Snowden came out, New York Times Reporters Committee, Wolf Blitzer, Andrea Mitchell, Washington Post. This is outrageous. ACLU is defending me, the American Civil Liberties Union. Wow, oh my God, right? That's because it's just a threshold you don't want to cross doing this sort of thing. And then we had a whistleblower come out from the FBI, leak documents to us saying that the computer systems called us news media, which is very important in our case, in our ongoing case against the FBI, which is ongoing. We still have a year left to litigate this. The search warrants are still active. So I think we're almost at the end, Stephen. Play another few slides. I could tell you so many stories. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm very honored to receive this award. We have this new foundation. If you go back, it's called Citizen Journalism Foundation. It is tax deductible. We have cards over there, and we have books, American Pravda, Breakthrough, Muckraker. Breakthrough is kind of an action-adventure story in the beginning of my life. Pravda is about the Hillary Clinton campaign. We infiltrated that. Muckraker is like a journalism textbook. And I don't know what else we have to show. I think that's it. And I'll just say that, I'll say that I'm very honored to be here. You've been a great friend. I support the mission. I support the cause. And I think that I think it's going to be a great year. I am an optimist. I'm not a cynic. I believe it's going to be a good year. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be wild. There's going to be whistleblowers coming out of every orifice of society. And every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m., we'll break into the story. You'll see this crazy story on Wednesday. I had to go in there like with a bulletproof vest, extract the guy. We got the hidden camera footage, just like a movie. And listen, if you ever want to give a camera to your nephew, you know who to call. Ghostbusters, no, OMG. And if you're lying, cheating, stealing, or scamming, we're gonna make you the next unwilling internet celebrity. Thank you.
Okay, before you all depart, before you all leave, I just want to call all the awardees up so we could get just everybody up here. This is our first event, so I'd love for that to happen. And then we really want you guys to, before you leave, we're going to have an opportunity for them to sign books up here. But the QR code, for me, is the most important thing tonight. And it's right here on these posters. I need 10,000 signatures. All you have to do is point your cell phone on there and sign my petition for a federal hearing. We want this. We really want to go to DC and get these mass killings stopped. So please do that. And next year, it is our hope that we fill this room again. And we have these awardees come back and celebrate others we find along the way. Vero Beach will always have our doors open to James O'Keefe, Joe Hoft, and Stephen Maureen Bannon. Rosemarie lives here, and she will help us hold that door open for you guys. So good night.
Good night to everybody, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.